students. Hope you all are doing well. Today we'll start a new topic, but before that let us discuss something. We all have seen various types of vehicles are moving around us. And to drive those vehicles, the most important thing necessary is fuel. Similarly, our human body is also a type of machine, and to drive that machine we too need fuel, but in the form of food. But now the question arises, how this energy is derived from this food? By the process of respiration. So respiration is the only process of deriving energy from food. And today we are about to discuss about this respiration in various organisms and its various forms.
Now we already know that food is the only source of energy. But the question arises, why we consider food as a source of energy? Let's have a quick review what we have learnt earlier. We, along with other animals, have heterotrophic mode of nutrition. That is, we have to depend on other organisms to have our own food. In the entire universe, the only organism that can prepare their own food are the autotrophs, and green plants falls under this section. They can make their own food through simple inorganic substances like carbon dioxide and water, which in presence of sunlight and chlorophyll gets converted into glucose and oxygen. Thus it is clear that though sun is the ultimate source of energy, but we do not have the capacity to have it directly from the sun. As a reason, we have to depend on plants to have that energy within us via food. Coming to the next slide, that is respiration in plants. But how does it happen? Let's discuss it in details. What does respiration in plants means? The process of respiration in plants involves using the sugars produced during photosynthesis plus oxygen to produce energy for plant growth. In many ways, respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. In the natural environment, plants produce their own food to survive. They use carbon dioxide from the environment to produce sugar and oxygen, which can later be utilized as a source of energy. While photosynthesis takes place only in the leaves and stems, but respiration it occurs in leaves, stems and roots of the plant. As with photosynthesis, plants get oxygen from the air through stomata. Respiration takes place in the mitochondria of the cell in the presence of oxygen, which is called aerobic respiration. In plants, there are two types of respiration. One is dark and the second is the photorespiration. The first kind occurs in the presence or absence of light, while the second occurs exclusively only in the presence of light. Now, let's understand the mechanism involved during respiration in leaves. The leaves of plants have tiny pores on their surface which are called stomata. Through these tiny pores occurs the exchange of gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen from the air, it enters the leaf through these tiny pores and reaches all the cells by the process of diffusion. This oxygen is used in respiration in the cells of the leaf, and the CO2 which is produced during this respiration diffuses out from the leaf into air through the same pores. So we can say that plants breathe through these tiny pores in the leaves called stomata. Here you can see in the slide that the guard cells of the stomata are open during daytime so that they can perform photosynthesis. But it is closed during night. Why? Because there is no sunlight, and also to prevent the excess loss of water and gases. Apart from leaves, respiration also occurs in roots. Roots of the plant, they take oxygen from the air that is present in between the particles of soil. Root hair, which is an extension of the epidermal cells of a root, is in direct contact with the soil. Oxygen diffuses in root hair and reaches all the other cells of the roots. It is through root hairs that only carbon dioxide gets diffused into them and is expelled from the roots of a plant. Thus, respiration in roots of the plant occurs by diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide through root hairs. Also, many a times we have noticed that plants die if they are waterlogged for long. The reason behind is that waterlogging air is expelled from in between the particles of soil, and thus oxygen becomes unavailable to the roots of the plants. And under such condition, plants respire anaerobically, which produces alcohol and kills them. Talking about breathing and respiration in different animals, let's begin with fish. Fish, they breathe through their gills, but earthworm, they breathe through their skin. But how the respiration is carried on? They absorb the oxygen needed for respiration through its thin and moist skin. This oxygen is then transported to all the cells of the earthworm by its blood, where it is used in respiration. And the carbon dioxide produced during this process is carried back by the blood and expelled from the body of the earthworm through its skin. But insects like cockroaches, they breathe through spiracles. For insects, air enters the respiratory system through a series of external openings called spiracles. These spiracles, which act as muscular valves in some insects, lead to the internal respiratory system, which is comprised of a densely networked array of tubes called tracheae. To simplify the concept of insect respiratory system, let us take an example of a sponge. You all have seen that sponge has small holes that allow water to get inside and moisten it. The spiracle openings allow air into the tracheal system, bathing the insect's tissue with oxygen. And carbon dioxide, which is the metabolic waste, exits from the body through these spiracles. One interesting fact about frog is that they breathe through their both skin and lungs. On land, lungs help in the respiration process by inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, but when they're inside water, they breathe through their skin. So, on a whole, respiration involves the mechanism of breathing, which means inhalation and exhalation. And that inhalation involves uptake of oxygen, which leads to the breakdown of food molecules by oxidation and releasing the energy from it. Now let's understand the mechanism behind breathing. Breathing means we all know inhaling of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide. But what exactly happens during this phenomenon? In this slide, you can see that a large dome-shaped muscle under the lungs, which is known as the diaphragm, squeezes downward when you breathe in, making a vacuum that causes a rush of fresh air into your lungs, and the rib cage expands as rib muscles contract. In same way, the opposite happens when you breathe out. That is, your diaphragm relaxes upward, pushing on your lungs, letting them to deflate, and the rib cage gets smaller as rib muscles relaxes. The organs involved in human respiratory system are nose, nasal passages, trachea, bronchi, lungs, and diaphragm. The primary organs of the respiratory system are the lungs, which function to take in oxygen and expel CO2 as we breathe. This gas exchange process is performed by the lungs and respiratory system. Air, which is a mixture of oxygen and other gases, is inhaled. In the throat, trachea or windpipe filters the air. The trachea branches into two bronchi tubes that leads to the lungs. An exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place into the alveoli, which are small structures within the lungs, and the carbon dioxide, which is a waste gas, is exhaled and the cycle begins again with the next breath. Coming to the next slide, here you can see that the cellular respiration is further categorized into two types, aerobic and anaerobic. Coming to aerobic, the respiration that involves the breakdown of food molecules in presence of oxygen, and the products formed are carbon dioxide, water and more energy. Whereas in anaerobic respiration takes place in absence of oxygen, and the products formed are alcohol, carbon dioxide and less energy. But why such a difference is seen in energy production in case of aerobes and anaerobes? In aerobic respiration, there is complete breakdown of food molecules that leads to the production of more energy. And most of the living beings, they carry out this aerobic form of respiration. Whereas in anaerobic, partial breakdown occurs. Some organisms such as yeast, they break down glucose in the absence of oxygen. In such cases, glucose is not completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water, which leads to the formation of all intermediate components with the release of less amount of energy. Not only microscopic organisms carry out this anaerobic respiration, but this form of respiration is also seen in case of human beings. One such example is muscle cramp. Whenever you do a lot of exercise, you experience muscle cramps. So, these muscle cramps are nothing but a form of anaerobic respiration, where instead of carbon dioxide, your muscles produce lactic acid, which basically occurs due to the partial breakdown of glucose. And this accumulation of lactic acid is followed by muscle cramps. But how to get relief of it? And the answer is either by hot water bath or massage. But how does it work? Hot water bath or massage improves the circulation of blood in the muscles. Due to this improved blood flow, the supply of oxygen to the muscles increases. This oxygen breaks down the accumulated lactic acid in muscles into carbon dioxide and water and gives us relief from these cramps. Now, let us have a quick review on some of the important terms from this chapter. First, respiration releases energy from the food. The energy released by respiration is used by each cell of the organism's body to perform various functions. Next, what is breathing? The process of inhaling and exhaling of air. And what is cellular respiration? The process of breakdown of food to produce energy. Aerobic respiration is when the food is broken down to make carbon dioxide and water, and it gives out energy. Taking enough air rich in oxygen into the body, that is lungs, is called inhalation, and giving out of air rich in carbon dioxide is called exhalation. The number of times a person breathes in a minute is called breathing rate. A breath means one inhalation plus one exhalation. Whenever a person needs extra energy, he breathes faster. On an average, an adult human being breathes 15 to 19 times in a minute. During heavy exercise, a breathing can go up to 25 times per minute. We feel hungry after a heavy physical exercise because a lot of food has been consumed by us, which is used during respiration. When we sleep or rest out, breathing rate goes down. The reason is due to the movement of less rib cage during sleep. Whenever you are sleeping, your oxygen levels are slower and carbon dioxide are higher. So, level of breathing goes slightly down when we sleep or rest out. Let us see some of the involuntary functions of our body. First comes sneezing. When we inhale air, it contains dust particles. These dust particles get trapped in the air present in our nostrils. Sometimes these particles may pass through the air and enter the nasal cavity. They irritate the mucous lining of the nasal cavity, and as a result, we sneeze. Next comes yawning. The reason behind the occurrence of yawning is insufficient of oxygen in the body. For instance, if we are tired, stressed, feel sleepy or drowsy, we do not breathe as deeply as we do, and as a result, our breathing rate slows down. Due to the slower breathing rate, less oxygen goes into our body, which is insufficient for respiration. So, the yawning helps in bringing more oxygen into our blood because during this process, our mouth opens wide and we take a long and deep breath of air. Now, let me say you something very important which we can see in our everyday life, that is, people are smoking. But how smoking is injurious for our health? Smoking sends tobacco smoke inside our body, and the chemicals which are present inside this tobacco smoke damage the lungs in many ways. The effects are like it destroys the lung tissues, due to which breathing rate becomes difficult. It even causes lung cancer and also heart diseases. So, that is all about respiration. We dealt with the human beings, insects, animals, and plants, and the organs involved in it, and also with the different forms of respiration. Hope this discussion will be fruitful for you in terms of dealing the chapter. Thank you.